Welcome back to AICE Textbook Translations. This is our unit on AICE International History. This is a channel where we not only review and recap content from AICE textbooks, but we also translate them into modern words so you can get that information faster into your smart little brain. I am your host, Jorge Dagger. Let's get straight into it! So in our last episode, we already settled what new imperialism was, why it happened, how it happened, who and what caused it. But now, in this unit, we're going to look at how it affected our favorite toxic frenemy group, Europe. New imperialism was meant to be super peaceful, super calm, everyone's collaborating, everyone loves each other. However, that peace was not always easy to keep. In 1898, Britain was expanding southwards from Egypt, and France was coming from the west to the east, from Mali, and they met in Fashoda, Sudan. This caused the Fashoda incident. They both wanted it, but they remembered that new imperialism was peaceful, and more importantly, they knew that war was expensive, and they were both flat out broke. However, both countries claimed that they had been the victim of aggression from the other party, and they started prepping for war. However, when tensions were at an all-time high and the troops were being mobilized, they reached an agreement where Britain would recognize French Morocco so long as France agreed to recognize British presence in Egypt and the Sudan. Even though both countries felt war was about to happen, they avoided it. Then, from 1871 to 1914, Europe was in a tense calm, kind of like when you and your friend argue and then the next day you guys have to sit together at lunch, just looking at each other but not talking. European powers knew that war was going to break out at some point, so they just started an arms race, also known as a weapon-building craze. Germany jumped in on this and finally joined the Imperial Club. They started with their Welt politic and they started taking territories overseas. This made Britain feel threatened, and this tension only increased in 1906 when Germany's navy started building warships in bulk. They started building warships like they'd never built warships before. This greatly threatened Britain because they felt like they were going to put those ships right in the North Sea, right next to them, since they didn't have big enough of an empire to really stretch those ships out. France also had ancestral beef with Germany. So France and Britain chose to put their differences aside and make an alliance against Germany to help defend themselves. This whole alliance was centered on the protection and recognition of French claims in Morocco, something that Germany was looking to threaten. This alliance was known as the Entente Cordiale. However, Germany decided to be this little toxic little snake that it's always been and sent the Kaiser to Morocco. While he was there, he gave the Moroccan people support for their independence if they wanted it. This was a huge no-no during this time, since they were basically calling for an end of French presence in Morocco. Britain supported France in being angry, so they met up in a city in Morocco and talked about what they were going to do to deal with Germany going behind their backs and instigating Moroccan independence. In an attempt to humiliate France even more, Germany sent a warship to the coast of Morocco, pointing its guns at the port of Agadir. Britain sided with France and said, no, no, no. They scared Germany, and Germany backed off. But many politicians thought that Germany should have still chosen war over this resolution. This is just world leaders showing us that they are human after all, and they did the 1911 equivalent of the ops going behind your back and talking bad about you to the 10 out of 10 brunette, and then you and your homeboy gang up on the ops and scare them out. Now, did you think the drama stopped at Europe? No, you got this all wrong, because now we're shifting over to Asia, specifically China. While the Europeans were at the great power lunch table, they were always arguing and fighting and being fake and petty. So China decided to aura farm and be a nonchalant dreadhead and enter flow state in his era. So he left the lunch table and sat alone. And for a while, no one really noticed, and it worked out well for China. China felt like he was doing better, like he was growing, like he was the best because he wasn't arguing with them. However, while on the outside, everyone thought everything was fine with China, China lost his ability to defend himself against aggression from the people at the lunch table. However, China and Portugal were still tight. They were still casual friends. They would still trade some stuff here and there. But Britain over here, he was trying too hard to be China's friend. Britain was like, China, give me your silk. China, give me your tea. China, 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 China. And China was so over. China did not want to do this. China was self-contained. Britain then started to trade with them, and they left opium in China. Opium is a highly addictive drug, and it literally drove the Chinese people crazy. This led to China obviously getting mad and started fighting with Britain. This caused the First and Second Opium Wars, both of which China lost, undermining its power in its own country. After the Second Opium War, China gave Hong Kong to Britain, and they were forced to come back to the lunch table. Everyone there bullied China way too much and started building spheres of influence in his territory. This led to the Taiping Rebellion of 1850 to 1864. That killed about 20 million Chinese people and was only put down with help from the British and the French. Then, as if China hadn't been through enough, they got into a fight with Japan from 1894 to 1895. Japan was this new kid at the lunch table who was trying to show off all his new cool warships, but they were right next to China. And this led to them losing even more land and be even more humiliated. Then by 1899, the United States, another new member to the Great Power table, decided to give everyone the equal right to trade with China without even asking China if he was okay with it. In 1901, Chinese nationalists, seeing that their country had lost so much aura, decided to take back control. The Chinese government supported them, and then 8 other people at the Great Power lunch table ganged up on China. They obviously won over China, and they made China pay 67 million Great British pounds over the course of 39 years to cover up for damages. This made China be humiliated, and everyone took so much advantage of him, ending his nonchalant era. Meanwhile, we moved back to Africa and things were getting heated in the Cape Colony. Dutch descendants that first settled the Cape Colony were called the Boers, but they were beefing with the British. Like, they were mad beefing with them. They did not want to know about them. They didn't want them ruling over them, so they left eastwards. They decided to take their leave. They just left. They formed 2 new republics, the Orient Free State and the Transvaal. After finding gold there, Britain decided they wanted to be the boss of the republics too, because why not own everything? We're Britain, we're the best. And this led to the Boers not liking that. They did not like that the British were the boss of them. That's why they left in the first place. But they wanted help with fighting off the Zulu nation, a native tribe in South Africa. So they decided to keep quiet. But once the Zulu threat was eliminated, they weren't a threat anymore, the Boers just left. They just told Britain, listen, we don't like you. Why are you still here? Just leave. Britain obviously was not happy with this. They wanted the gold. So they went to war over it. And the Boers won. They cooked so hard. Generational cook. I'm not even kidding. They were 2 little republics against the biggest empire in the world, and they still won. Wow. Holy underdog story, honestly. But the British were so sour about this. So, we already spoke about this guy, Cecil Rhodes, the imperialist adventurer, responsible for half of Africa's suffering. He decided to make the Boers revolt inside their republics to make the republics weaker and easier to take. However, the Boers were no, we like living in our republics. We're not going to revolt. And Rhodes was you know what? I'm still going to go. So he did the Jameson Raid of 1895, which also failed and was also pushed back by the Boers. After this, we bring back our favorite creator of beef in Europe, Germany. And Germany decided to send the president of the Boers, Paul Kruger, a telegram saying, I congratulate you so much on defeating Britain. LOL, let's be besties, I love you. However, Britain saw this and they were like, why are you texting them when they literally just got into a fight with me? That's not very cool. And this obviously made Britain furious and made any chance of even frenemy status between Britain and Germany super impossible. This further undermined Britain and made them look like an oppressive colonizer while also enhancing Germany's image of fighting for the smaller underdog states. In 1899, Paul Kruger went up to Britain and was like, listen, we are independent. You are leaving our country now. And then Britain was like, how about no? So then they went head to head. However, this time, Britain was determined to win because, third time's the charm. But it wasn't a charm for Britain. What Britain did was employ inhumane tactics like placing Boer women and children in concentration camps and the very controversial scorched earth tactic, which made it so that they burned fertile ground to deny the enemy food, crops, or shelter. Oh, that's not... This did a number on Britain's PR and its international image, making it seem to everyone like they were the face of evil, and to the people at home as if the government was fighting expensive wars and killing men while also committing literal war crimes against civilians. Let's just say Britain was not so proud of this and ended up saying it was all AI, but we know the truth. However, imperialism was not all bad, as there were also many efforts to keep peace in Europe that worked and made the idea of peaceful imperialism seem less like some crazy dream like you being in the NBA and more like a current reality. The first of these was the Berlin Conference, in which the problematic friend group decided to meet in Berlin and settle their claims over Africa peacefully and diplomatically. Under a few conditions, though. This is Europe. Of course, their peace is going to be conditional. Have you not been keeping up with how problematic these people are? The main two were that everyone had the right to sail freely along the Congo River, a very important river for African trade in the center of Africa. And also that slavery would be illegal in Africa, erasing doubts about inhumane treatment while also giving the Europeans moral superiority and justification. The Treaty of Berlin clearly laid out the playing rules for conquering and occupying land in Africa, as well as committing countries to the playing rules of imperialism. Remember when I called the Scramble for Africa the world's largest game of Monopoly? This was basically the rule book, but unlike real Monopoly, the players actually read it before starting. But similar efforts were also seen in China with the American Open Door Policy and the Eight-Nation Alliance we mentioned earlier. All these events happening in China showed the nations wanted to collaborate and achieve world peace. Not really, but like, okay, you're getting there. That's nice, sweetie. However, at the end of the Sino-Japanese War in 1895, the Japanese retained control of Port Arthur. And this made Russia furious. Like, Russia was fuming. And they ganged up with France and Britain to scare Japan into giving Port Arthur to them. This worked, and Japan backed off in exchange for money. Almost immediately after China got back Port Arthur, Russia completely took it back. This is the equivalent of you and your homeboys making a group chat to eliminate the ops, but are also wanting the 10 out of 10 baddie, and you guys succeed. The world felt tense. But hey, at least they weren't fighting a stupid war, and everyone's going to be peaceful forever, right? Thank you so much for watching. Keep watching AICE Textbook Translated. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to be notified when we upload our next videos. If you want to keep learning, if you want to ace your AICE International test, claim this energy right here in this comment section. I believe in you. Use my videos. You will pass. Good luck on your test.